Just want to make a quick response to a video scene. I've seen it before actually, but I was thinking about it a bit more this time. It's a clip from, I assume, a documentary called Scared Straight. Now, I want to express my views on what I've seen. Basically, to give you the background, if you don't know what this is, it shows some young men, well, teenagers, barely more than boys, in a high security prison, in this case in Georgia. And basically, the concept of being scared straight is that the prison guards allow them to be subjected to uh, unrelenting verbal abuse by some truly hardened criminal thugs, crip members, hardened gang members. And the concept is that these kids think they're tough, but it's sort of giving them a taste of the real gang life before they go down a darker path. In the UK, we would use the expression tough love. Now, very often I feel uncomfortable with these sort of reality shows, and certainly I've been outspoken about certain experiments in the UK. However, as I reflect on this, there's a few things to bear in mind. It's unpleasant to watch, and it's certainly abusive, verbally speaking, but in the long run, this initiative could be saving these young men's lives. I mean, if you see the footage, I'll put a clip below this. It's not pleasant to watch it. It's bullying. It's very unpleasant. But the concept behind this is based on the notion of tough love. That is that by scaring these young men shitless um, as to what the realities of gang life are, i.e., it's not glamorous, it's not brave, it's not. There's nothing fun about it. It's just a very grim world. Um, then it shows it could well be a very strong deterrent. I would be shocked if those young men were to go back to the life that they were living. Presumably, they were petty criminals or so petty to an extent. But the thing about this is, the liberal argument would be that it's pure evil and it's child abuse and all sort of thing. But if you really analyze this a little bit, I've had personal experience with gangs, and I'm telling you now, young offenders, you can give them chance after chance after chance after chance. And I'm telling you, in most cases, the tap on the wrist approach, they laugh at it. They simply laugh at it. So, although I didn't enjoy watching that, although I would prefer it wasn't necessary, I believe it is necessary. I believe that it might be the only way to put some of these young men on the right track. I mean, one of them was 13, one of them, he ended up in tears. One of them was 16, and it showed the charges that they were in there for. The 16-year-old was in for domestic violence. I presume that means beating up his girlfriend or whatever. But clearly, these guys think they're tough, and they probably go around swaggering and acting big. But obviously, in a real hellhole prison like this, they see the other side. If this doesn't deter them, I don't know what will. Now, I just don't buy that in. The thing is, I made a video a while back on the Norwegian justice system. Clearly, the Scandinavian model, they would absolutely, drop their jaw at this sort of thing. The Scandinavian model would be, oh, give them presents and make them feel good about themselves. Um, I don't like everything about the American prison system, and certainly there needs to be scrutiny of the fact that it is the largest prison population in the world. America has many, many, many flaws. However, on this occasion, with this principle, I think there could be something positive in it. Now, I've seen similar initiatives in the UK. Obviously, we don't quite have the situation as would be comparable to the United States, and we don't have the same level of gang culture. But I'd say the British situation is somewhere between Scandinavia and the US, i.e., our gang situation is not as bad as the States, but it is a lot more serious than it would be in Scandinavian countries. So our approach is somewhere in the middle. No doubt liberals would argue that this is just outright wrong. But I would ask them if there is an approach in place, i.e., giving these young offenders community service, giving them a tap on the wrist, and they are literally laughing at it, and they're giving chance after chance after chance, and they blow it every time. What other approach is there? I mean, just to be clear about this, what we're seeing in the video is verbal abuse. There isn't actually any hardcore physical abuse. You know, they're not being hit, they're not being sexually abused or anything like that. So we're not seeing any actual physical violence. It's all shouting. It's humiliating. It is unpleasant. But I have had run-ins with gangs, and I do believe that maybe there is no other approach for people who are so arrogant and so selfish and so um, antisocial that there is no other way. And I don't only think that the liberal approach is not practical. I think it's also unethical on the grounds that giving a young offender what they want is caving into their demands. And in my view, it actually teaches them that what they're doing, there's no problem with it. It's like caving into a bully. Now, what we're seeing in the video is sort of bullying, but then bear in mind the young men that are brought there for a reason. They're not, these guys have committed serious crimes for their age, and if they continue down that path, they're going to end up in a much darker world. So you have to weigh it up. Um, 10 minutes, 15 minutes of verbal abuse and being scared shitless, or a lifetime completely lost and ruined because they get into gang culture. Now, I think when it comes to dealing with gang culture, there's no easy answers. Um, and there could be other approaches. I mean, we need to look at, for example, of course we need to look at the background. But what I'm saying is just simply looking at the background and trying to deal with root causes isn't always enough, because there can be programs put in place to deal with that, and you still have gang activity. I don't believe that, for example, solving poverty is going to change these problems overnight. I think it would help, but the fact of the matter is there is a lot of young men who think that gang lifestyle is glamorous. Yes, they might be doing it for a wide range of reasons, but the fact is they're deluded into thinking there's something glamorous about that. They need to be absolutely rigidly, abundantly informed that beating up women, that terrorizing fellow citizens, that robbing from hardworking shopkeepers, etc. You can't go through life treating people that way. And in the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to suffer. So my conclusion on this is that it's not pleasant to watch. I'd rather it wasn't that way, but in some cases I see no other choice. Now, like I say, there is multifaceted approaches to dealing with gang culture in Honduras. Honduras, the coffee company Kengo has a very positive program of getting young people away from gangs, and I would absolutely commend that approach. But I don't think that the dynamics in the background to gang activity can be compared all over the world. So, what attracts young men and sometimes young women to gangs in Honduras may not necessarily be the same thing that motivates them to gang lifestyle in the States. In the case of Honduras, it may be poverty. In the case of the States, and obviously this is a simplification, but in the case of the States, it may be that they're deluding themselves into thinking that it's some sort of glamorous lifestyle. Although I imagine poverty definitely plays a role as well. Um, but there's multifaceted aspects to this. Just in case any, just so that people don't misunderstand me, I don't take any pleasure from this, and I'd prefer that it didn't have to be this way. But as someone who has experienced gangs, um, I know what it's like. I know what these people are capable of. I mean, in my case, the gangs weren't Bloods or Crips; they weren't on that sort of level, but they still managed to make our life hell in the time that we had to put up with them. So I do believe in zero tolerance as an approach to gang activity. I absolutely believe in that. I may as well incorporate this into the video, incidentally. I've been reading reports that homicide rates in a lot of big American cities have shot up in the last few months. For example, in Baltimore, there were 43 homicides last month. One theory for this is that the police have taken a hands-off approach. Now, if that's true, it's very, very unfortunate because there seems to be a situation at the moment where the gulf between the police and the public is massive. That's very unfortunate. And the reason I'm mentioning this is if we're not careful, we will see similar things in the UK. The situation here, although not comparable, is not massively different. Um, we don't have the gun culture, but in other respects, there are some similarities. Um, so what's the answer? Well, clearly there needs to be more on-hand policing. But the thing here is the police need to get the balance right. They have a very difficult job. But I think what the public want is the police to arrest the bad guys and not abuse their position. So when the police shoot guys who are unarmed, that doesn't win any public favor. But no one is going to condemn the police for, no thinking person is going to condemn the police for apprehending a violent, dangerous criminal. At least no fair-minded person would do that. But I think this situation has come about because the police have got themselves into a position where they've had to take a hands-on approach because they're seen as thugs in uniform. But as a result, criminal thugs have taken opportunity of the situation. I'm only mentioning this because it ties into the whole gang thing. Anyway, let me know your thoughts about the whole concept of tough love or scared straight. Um, Once again, I take no pleasure from it, but when I really reflect on this issue, in some cases I don't see any other way. When young offenders are given chance after chance after chance, and they laugh at the liberal approach, literally, in some cases, they literally laugh at. I mean, here in the UK, we have community service for so-called petty crimes. There have been examples of people taking that community service in one situation 600 times. Now, the reason the individual in question had done that so many times without a custodial sentence is in every case it had been so-called petty crime, i.e., antisocial behaviour, blasting music late at nights, smashing telephone boxes, things that are so-called trivial crime, but nevertheless impact the quality of the community that he was in. He literally laughed at the sentence because he said he didn't give a damn. He wouldn't bother turning up to the community service. So I'm not against community service in some cases, but there comes a point when there needs to be something a lot tougher. And I do support the principle of scaring young thugs straight because there may be no other answer. If you let them do what they want, if you take a sort of tap them on the wrist approach, then they arrogantly think they can do as they please. I think it's very naive, the liberal attitude that, oh, we'll sort of listen to their concerns and we'll give them what they want and then they'll kind of behave themselves. I think it's profoundly naive. And I'm not of the school of sort of like, oh, flog him and hang him. You need to look at the background as well. But what liberals need to understand, and I'm saying this as a centrist with some liberal leanings, is that you need to understand there are young offenders who simply do not care. And you could give them lots of chances to change their life, and they still fuck up and they still manage to go back and terrorize society. When you take the approach of giving them what they want, then it ultimately ends up in a circle. So ultimately, I think this approach might be practical. I'd like to see the long-term results, incidentally. I'd like to see sort of a part two of this to see if the young offenders in the video did change their life. And if they did, then it works. And it should be encouraged because America has to deal with this situation of having a huge prison population and gang culture. I don't know how long this approach has been used, but if it has proven to be effective, then that has to be used. It's a good thing. Let me know your thoughts. Cheers.